typhoid.
Okay. Any other thing that you know about? When we talk
Ma'am,
about, haha, yes.
it is a fecal-oral route, but it has extra intestinal manifestations only. Means the route is through GIT, but symptoms are not in GIT. It is systemic
Okay.
symptoms.
Okay. Good. Good. Right. So now let's understand a bit of detail about this enteric fever. Right. Yeah. First of all, as you have said, what is enteric fever? We all know about the typhoid fever. There is a term typhoid fever, and there is another thing paratyphoid fever, right? So when we include both of these fevers, that is typhoid as well as paratyphoid fever, then we call it as the enteric fever, right? And enteric, what anybody can tell me what this enteric means? What is means enteric? Anybody? Enteric. Have you heard this term enteric? Yes,
Ma'am,
Urvashi.
something relating to the intestines.
Yeah, very good. Something related to intestine. Okay, right. So now let's see how it is further related. So what is typhoid fever is basically when we talk about enteric fever, it includes both the typhoid and the paratyphoid fever. One classical thing is that it is found only in humans. This condition is found only in humans, right? So what is this condition? Whenever there is a systemic infection that is caused by Salmonella typhi, then it is known as the typhoid fever. Clear? And what happens in this particular condition? In this, there's typical continuous fever for 3 to 4 weeks, relative bradycardia is there, and intestinal lymphoid tissues, reticular endothelial system, gallbladder, all these systemic systems are involved. Clear? So till now, we have come to know that the first term is the enteric fever that has something to relate with the intestines. This enteric fever, it includes both typhoid as well as paratyphoid fever. When we talk about the typhoid fevers, these are found only in humans caused by Salmonella typhi, and typically they have fever presentation with fever and bradycardia, and intestinal lymphoid tissue and gallbladder are in particularly involved. Clear? That is a general introduction about typhoid fever. So that is a bit of introduction about the typhoid fever's evolution. Like first of all, this term was described by Thomas Willis, who first described this term typhoid fever in 1659. Thereafter, this Charles Alexander Louis, he proposed this name typhoid fever, and William Wood, he was the first to differentiate between typhus and typhoid in 1837. So this is just a brief introduction about the history part. Now, we all know that typhoid is quite prevalent in India. It is endemic in India. How we classify its endemicity? Like it can be classified as there can be high endemicity, medium endemicity, and low endemicity. Right? India is endemic to typhoid. Can anybody tell me what is the difference between epidemic and endemic? Anybody? Yeah, Vasundhara.
Ma'am,
Vasundhara. Vasundhara, you there? Roll number 201. हाँ, yeah, बच्चे. I have used the term that India typhoid is endemic in India. Can you tell me what is this term endemic and what is the term epidemic?
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ.
Ma'am, epidemic
Hmm.
is widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a time.
Okay. And then what is endemic?
Uh, Ma'am, endemic.
Widespread occurrence in a community that you have told that it is epidemic. Then what is endemic?
Ma'am, it is a disease which is regularly found among people of a particular uh, among particular people in a area.
Okay, okay, good. Anybody else? Yes, Ina, you wanted to say something earlier.
Ma'am, epidemic is when there is unusual occurrence of a disease in an area, in a population, and
Okay,
endemic
very
is when
good.
a disease occurs indigenously in an area.
Okay,
It is in
okay. Oh, so can you
present.
give me an example of an epidemic and an endemic disease?
From Japanese encephalitis is endemic in Gorakhpur and some districts of Uttar Pradesh.
Okay, any more common example?
Ma'am,
And,
dengue in Delhi.
okay, okay. Malaria, an example pertaining to malaria. Anyways, good, good, good try. Anything else related to epidemic? Example for epidemic? Yeah, Bharti. Yes, Bharti Devi. Rule number 43. Bharti, can you hear me? Rule number 43, Bharti isn't there. In case who is not responding, I'll be noting down the name and they will be considered absent during the class, okay? Ruchi Das. Ruchi?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Ruchi. Ruchi, can you give me an example of an epidemic?
Ma'am, cholera in India.
Cholera in India. It is an epidemic?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Any other example? Any other example? Anybody?
Ma'am, smallpox epidemic.
Okay, good. Good. Right. So somebody used the term unusual. Right. This term is basically very important when we define epidemic and endemic. Right. When there is unusual occurrence, right, as compared to the previous as compared to the similar time that of the last year, right, and the same region, then it is called an epidemic. It is unusual occurrence of the same of the disease. इस सेम टाइम पे पिछले साल में उसी जगह पे वो डिजीज नहीं थी इतना, बट उसी टाइम पे आज इस टाइम पे वो डिजीज की अनयूजुअल अक्रेंस है, दैट इज एन एपिडेमिक. एंड व्हेन इट बिकम्स रेगुलरली अकरिंग देयर इन स्मॉल पॉकेट्स, देन इट लीड्स टू एंडेमिसिटी. Right, so now typhoid has become endemic in India. Clear? So based upon the endemicity, now typhoid, we have classified it as it can be high endemicity, it can have medium endemicity and low endemicity. Now, when we talk about a disease, when we talk about a disease, then we have to know about three major things. First, the epidemiological determinants which are leading that disease, right? Then the clinical features with which we identify that disease. Then the how to diagnose that disease and how to manage. In manage, we deal with how to treat that disease and how to prevent the further occurrence of that disease. Right? So basically these are 3-4 heads under which we read or study a disease. So the first and the foremost are the epidemiological determinants. As we have, I guess we have discussed earlier also during the cholera class, that why these epidemiological determinants are important to study, because through these determinants we know the what is the agent that can actually cause the disease, who is the host who is susceptible to that particular agent, and what are the environmental and other social factors that are helpful in predisposing that disease. Okay, so the interaction of all these three factors, the presence of the agent, susceptibility of the host, and the favorable environmental conditions for the occurrence of the disease, all these three things they can lead to the occurrence of a particular disease, right? So coming on to the agent that can lead to typhoid. Typhoid is mainly, as we have already told, that it is mainly caused by Salmonella typhi bacteria. It belongs to family Enterobacteriaceae. That is basically all these things are covered in your microbiology sessions. This Salmonella typhi is a gram-negative, facultative aerobic, non-spore forming bacteria and is motile. So I have used one term, facultative aerobic. Can anybody tell me what is this term, facultative aerobic? Facultative aerobic, you must have covered in your microbiology classes. Navya? Navya Arora?
Yes, ma'am.
Ha, Navya, have you ever come across this term, facultative aerob?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
Oh, ma'am, actually, we've learned facultative anaerobe
Hmm. Just
and
tell me what did
facultative
you mean?
aerobes are the ones that live in the presence of oxygen, but they don't essentially require it. Like they can persist without oxygen as well.
Exactly, very good. Okay, that means we have two types of organisms. One are obligatory and one are facultative. Obligatory are those who necessarily depends upon that particular thing, either oxygen or not. And similarly, facultative is who require that for survival, that will be beneficial, but they can also survive in the absence of oxygen. So it is a facultative aerobic organism, right? So what is the agent in case of typhoid? It is caused by Salmonella typhi, is gram-negative bacilli, and it is motile and it has peritrichous flagella. These all things you will be covering in your microbiology classes, like what is this peritrichous flagella, how many types of flagella, that I won't be taking here. Okay. Now this agent, that is Salmonella typhi, it has three main antigens in it. Okay, it has O antigen, it has H antigen, and it has a VA polysaccharide. And apart from this, it has so many phages in it. Right? So this phage typing is very useful epidemiological tool when we need to know the source of the epidemic. Okay, so phage typing is also done in case of typhoid. Clear? So as we have discussed, antigenic structure of Salmonella, it has an O antigen, that is a somatic antigen, and H antigen, that is the flagellar antigen. This O antigen, it is comparatively heat stable, and to H antigen, that is very strongly immunogenic. It has strong immunogenic properties, right? And because of this H antigen, there is high antibody formation in case of the exposure to typhoid. Either the antibody formation can be either because of the immunization, or it can be also because of the infection. So this is the antigenic structure of Salmonella. Then coming on to the reservoir of infection. As we have discussed earlier also, that it is the man is the only known reservoir in case of typhoid. Okay. So human is the only case as well as the carrier in case of the this typhoid infection. So I guess you have understood earlier also that what do you mean by reservoir of infection? What do you mean by reservoir of infection? Ashi, roll number 2. Yes, Ashi. Ashi, are you there? Roll number 2, Ashi. See, I'll be noting down the names those who are not responding. Roll number 17, Alvia. Roll number 17, Alvia. Alvia. Roll number 29, Ankita. Roll number 29, Ankita. Roll number 13, Akshita.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Akshita, first of all, can you tell me what is the agent for typhoid?
Ma'am, the agent for typhoid is Salmonella typhi.
Okay. What type of an organism it is?
Ma'am, it is a facultative anaerobe
The bacilli, okay,
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, it belongs to Enterobacteriaceae. It is a
okay,
bacilli.
okay,
Yes.
okay. Then second term we have come across is to reservoir of infection. Can you tell me what is a reservoir? We have said that
Yes.
human being is the only known reservoir in case of typhoid. What is a reservoir?
Ma'am, a reservoir can be any person, animal, or any substance in which the
Hmm.
infectious agent lives and multiplies.
Okay. So it where he can live, it can survive, it can live, and it can multiply further. Right? So it is necessary for the survival of the agent. So that is the reservoir. So in case of typhoid, what is the reservoir?
Ma'am, man is the only reservoir.
Man is the only known reservoir in case of typhoid. Good. Right? So so the reservoir, the man who is the reservoir can be either in the form of a case that who is currently suffering from the infection, and can be a carrier also who has either suffered earlier also, or he's just a carrier. He's not suffering from the disease but is carrying the bacilli. Okay, so either case or the carriers can act as the reservoir of infection. Now, the case will be infectious as long as the organism or the bacilli they are present in the stool or the urine. We know that the stool as well as the urine of the person it is infected. It contains the bacilli. So as long as these bacilli are present in the stools and the urine of the person, the case will be infectious. That particular person will be infectious. But in case of the carriers, they can be either they can be transmitting the disease for a longer period of time as compared to the case. For example, they can be incubatory or convalescent carriers. The convalescent carriers are those who have recovered from the infection. Now they are okay, now they are fine, but now still they are exhibiting the bacilli in their stools and the urine. So they are the convalescent carriers, and they can excrete bacilli for a longer period, like even for up to weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Right? In typhoid, there is a particular characteristic that is the chronic carriers. Chronic carriers are quite important in case of the typhoid. Right? They have the capability to excrete bacilli for even more than a year. What happens is that the bacilli that harbors itself in the gallbladder or the biliary tract, and it can be and can keep on shredding throughout, like even for years also. These chronic carriers they can exhibit the bacilli. Now you all have heard about typhoid Mary case, right? She is a classical example of chronic carrier, and she has led to the more almost about 1300 cases during her lifetime. So she was then quarantined, and after 26 years of quarantine, then she expired. Clear? So reservoir cases and carriers are quite important. Not only we need to focus on the cases while we discuss about the spread of infection, we need to focus upon the carriers also, because carriers they can be responsible for spreading infection to a larger number of people, and that too for a larger period of time. Okay, so this is an example of typhoid Mary, who was a chronic carrier for typhoid. Her name was Mary Mellon. She was the cook, and she gave rise to approximately 1300 cases in her lifetime. Right? So for reservoir, you have to remember cases as well as the carriers, and for carriers, you need to remember that the bacilli will be harboring in the either gallbladder or in the biliary tract, and will be slowly releasing itself. Yeah. So after the reservoir, what can be the sources of infection? Right, as it's very clear that this particular bacilli is present in the feces and the urine of the both cases and the carriers, but fecal carriers are comparatively more common than the urinary carriers. And apart from this, these are the direct or the primary sources, that is the feces and the urine of the cases and carriers. Apart from this, contaminated hands, contaminated water, contaminated food, contaminated other sources, they can also be the secondary sources of infection. Right? So till now, are we clear about the agent factors, the reservoir, and the source of the infection? Second, we come upon to the host factors. Host should be susceptible to infection. Only then he or she can get the infection. So as we earlier discussed also, in case of the host, the age, there's no bar to age, right? It can occur at any age, but yes, indeed, population surveillance studies have told us that the even more incidence can be found, even higher incidence can be there in younger age group, like in 5 to 19 years age group. And also, almost both the sexes though are equally predisposed, but yet cases are found comparatively higher in males, and females they exhibit a higher carrier rate. That is just based upon the population surveillance studies. Regarding immunity, as we all know that low immunity, there will be higher chances of infection. In case of the typhoid, the antibody production, we know that it is an intracellular organism. So antibody formation plays a very important role in combating the infection. That antibody formation or the immunity can either be achieved by infection, by getting the disease, or by immunization. So that can be active or passive. Antibody formation can be there. Just antibody against O antigen is higher in patients who have the disease, and against H antigen is higher in those who have got the immunization. Clear? So age, sex, and immunity, these are the three important host factors that can make a person susceptible to disease. अगर किसी को already disease हो रखा है, then he or she has the infection earlier, so he or she will be having the antibody, so there is a comparatively lesser chance of him either getting the disease or spreading the disease. And similarly, a person who have antibody formation because of the immunization, there is a comparatively quite reduced chance of getting him or her infected. Clear? So am I clear till host factors? Yes, Sanjana, are we clear? Sanjana?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we clear till the agent and the host factors? Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So now moving ahead, now we come on to the environmental factors. For typhoid, you have to remember one particular thing. Typhoid fever, it is regarded as index of general sanitation in any country. This line holds quite importance, and you can easily make out the transmission factors from this particular statement. It's the index of general sanitation. कितनी सफाई है, ठीक है, कितनी sanitation facilities है, कितना improved sanitation है किसी country में, ठीक है. So that is the typhoid, the occurrence of the typhoid fever, the endemicity of typhoid fever, okay, that can help us in knowing the index of general sanitation in that particular area, right? So can anybody tell me what all measures we take, what all measures or what all parameters can help us in knowing knowing this general sanitation in any particular region? What are the parameters that can help us to know the level of the general sanitation? Anybody? Anshika, roll number 31, Anshika. Can you tell? Anshika?
Yes, ma'am.
Anshika, can you tell what can be the indicators or parameters to know the sanitation levels of a region?
Ma'am, like the source of the water, whether the people are living in a community, like.
Okay, very good. Any other? Anything else? Yes, Anshika, anything else? Somebody has written washroom facility, open sanitation, very good. Open defecation. Okay, open defecation is another important point.
Ma'am, and the personal
Sewage.
hygiene of the people.
Very good. Personal hygiene of the people. So when we talk about sanitation, it is not only about about this toilet system or open defecation. Sanitation is about almost everything, about water supply, about food storage, right? Okay, about this about defecation facilities, about sanitary latrines, right? So everything everything should be secured, should be safe from the point of this production to the point of consumption. Okay, so this whole line should be safe and sanitized. Clear? Good. So as we have discussed that when we talk about the environmental factors responsible for sanitation, one important thing is that it is an index of general sanitation. So if the your drinking water supply, if that is polluted, okay, there can be the occurrence of typhoid fever. If the open urination is quite prevalent in a particular region, then it can also lead to the occurrence, lead to the this propagation of the bacilli there. If the persons are not maintaining good hygiene, okay, or they are not very well aware about the good hygienic measures regarding their health, even all these things can lead to the propagation of bacilli in that particular region. Right. So I have given 2-3 examples, like for example, if vegetables they are washed in contaminated water, okay, that can also be an indirect source of contamination. Even the bacilli can grow in milk and food if the food is kept for a longer period of time, okay. So the food, or it, then the bacilli can even grow there and multiply and survive. Even the bacilli can grow in milk even without altering the taste of the milk, right? So whenever the hygienic conditions are compromised, whenever their water source, water supply is contaminated, or it is mixed with the sewage water, okay, the handling conditions, the food handling conditions, they are not good, right? The if the persons who are who are handling the this urine and the feces of the patients, for example, if they are not washing their hands nicely, then all these things they can harbor the bacilli, and they can further ease out the transmission. Clear? So just remember, general sanitation index of the country, it can give us an idea about the typhoid fever. So whenever we talk about the general sanitation, all these points starting from the water sanitation, food sanitation, this latrine sanitation, all these things, personal hygiene, they should come in our mind. Okay. Then we talk about the incubation period. It is usually 10 to 14 days, and I guess in the previous session we have discussed what is incubation period of the disease. Do we need to discuss it again? I guess everybody knows what is the incubation period of the disease. We have discussed last time also. Yes, Sangeeta, roll number 155. Sangeeta, roll number 155.
Yes.
Yeah. We have already discussed about incubation period previously also. So are you clear what is incubation period of the disease?
Yes, ma'am. Incubation period is a time interval between the infection occur and the sign and symptoms developed.
Okay, good. Right. So basically, till the time the agent has infected our body, until the time the disease has actually occurred, right? So that is the incubation period. Good. Right. So till now, we are clear about the agent factors responsible for the occurrence of typhoid, the host factors which make the person susceptible, and the favorable environmental factors. Apart from that, we have also come to know about the reservoir of infection, source of infection, incubation period, and lastly the modes of transmission. So modes of transmission, as we have earlier discussed many times also, it's simply the fecal-oral route or the urine-oral routes, right? Because we have discussed that what is the key reservoir ka hai. Reservoir is the feces and reservoir is the man, and the source is the feces and the urine of the cases and the carriers. So the major route is the fecal-oral or the urine-oral route. So there can be either direct transmission, there can be either indirect transmission, right? How direct transmission? Direct soiling of the hands with the feces or the urine. Okay? And when can this happen? Direct soiling can happen to the nurses, to the staff, to the medical staff who are or the guardians of the patient who are taking care of the person, who are handling feces and urine of the cases and carriers while laboratory testing and everything. So direct soiling of the hands can happen, and that can be a mode of transmission. And indirect, we have discussed, like they can be either through milk, either through food, either through water, or either through our fingers, okay, or through flies. So these all can be the indirect modes of transmission. Till now, we have discussed about the epidemiological determinants, right? So agent, host, environment, and the basic thing that we have to remember is that it spreads basically by the fecal-oral or the urine-oral route, and because the bacilli, they are present in the feces and the stool of the urine. So either directly through soiling of the hands with the transmission can be separate, or it can be through indirect methods, like the food can be infected, food can be contaminated, vegetables can be contaminated, right? So all these things we have to remember. Now we, second aspect of the disease is the to know about the clinical features of the disease, right? When we talk about the typhoid fever, there is a week wise importance. We categorize the clinical features in the pattern of their occurrence week wise, right? So during the early phase, like in the first week, there are basically the prodromal symptoms, like constitutional symptoms will be there. The person will be having fever, a person will be having headache, cough, sore throat. Okay? Then slowly the fever will start, and the fever will be rising in a step ladder fashion. Okay? And it will keep on rising up to 4 to 5 days. And along with the fever, there will be pain. And the one characteristic is there can be either constipation or diarrhea, and the diarrhea will be is characteristically known as the pea soup diarrhea in case of typhoid. Then in the second week, when the fever has almost reached the peak, okay, then mild hepatosplenomegaly can occur in the patient. Rose spots can be seen, and relative bradycardia can occur. And thereafter, in the third week, the patient will now be in the typhoid state, which is characterized by toxemia, delirium, disorientation, and if untreated, can even lead to coma or further severity. Right? So that is the basic analogy of the clinical features of the typhoid. Right? So in first week, there is presence of the constitutional symptoms along with the presence of the step ladder pattern of the fever, along with constipation or diarrhea. That is the pea soup diarrhea. So these three things you have to remember in the first week. Then in second week, there can be hepatosplenomegaly, relative bradycardia, and rose spots can be present. And in the third week, if the conditions keep on persisting, then the person can be even present. It can even lead to disorientation, delirium, and even coma in patients. So you can see the presence of rose spots, aches and pains, high fever, chest congestion, diarrhea. So all these are the signs and symptoms of typhoid that we have discussed. So am I clear till now? Rule number 35. Anushka Bhattacharya. Rule number 35.
Yes, ma'am.
Anushka, are we clear till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me the major clinical features of typhoid? Just characteristic features. In the first week, what will happen? There will be constitutional symptoms. There will be step ladder pattern fever, and constipation or diarrhea. Either constipation or diarrhea, and the diarrhea can be pea soup diarrhea. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you have to remember what is happening in the first week onwards. Anshika, rule number 31.
Yes, ma'am.
Anshika, can you tell me the clinical features in brief? Just highlighting the major features.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in the first week, the patient will have a step-ladder pattern of the fever, the constitutional symptoms, headache, constipation, diarrhea. And in the second week, there will be splenomegaly, bradycardia, rose spots. And in the third week, there will be delirium and the coma.
Okay. So the characteristic features are that the step ladder. जब हम बोल रहे हैं ना step ladder rise in temperature, what do you mean by the step ladder rise?
Ma'am, like in typhoid, the patient has fever like in the evening. So the rise in temperature occurs in the evening, and by the night or by the day, the temperature falls.
Okay. And secondly, जो fever है वो एकदम से ही high grade fever नहीं होगा. There will be slowly rise in the fever. ठीक है? So there is a step ladder fashion rise in the temperature, and another characteristic is constipation or diarrhea. Either person can exhibit constipation or he or she can has diarrhea. And third important thing is the presence of rose spots. Clear? So you have to at least remember these 3 symptoms for typhoid.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Okay. Now coming on to the lab diagnosis. When we talk about the laboratory diagnosis of typhoid, there can be 3 ways to diagnose this condition. First is the microbiological procedures, second serological procedures, and third are some other diagnostic tests. We won't be going into very detail of these topics. Okay? So I'll just be taking in brief about these topics. So first is the microbiological procedure. So the mainstay of of diagnosis is the blood culture, right? So we can isolate this Salmonella typhi from blood, bone marrow, and stools, right? So blood culture is the mainstay of diagnosis, and if we do this blood culture in first week, it is the chances of getting positive results are about 90%, and subsequently the chances they get decreased. I guess you must have heard about the mnemonic BASU for this laboratory diagnosis of typhoid. That is B for its blood cultures, A for his antibody diagnosis, S for his stool, and U is for urine. So what we say is that in the first week, blood culture reports are usually positive. In second week, we can go for the antibody antibody testing, that is like the Vidal test, and in third and fourth week subsequently, the bacilli will be present in the stool and urine. Clear? So the mainstay is the blood culture, and it is highly positive in first week. Second are the serological procedure, as we have discussed. The serological procedure, that is the Vidal test, and the significant titers they are helping in diagnosis, and these levels of the antibodies agglutinin they rise abruptly during second or the third week. So as we have discussed earlier also, first week, what is the relevant test for typhoid diagnosis is the blood cultures. The blood culture report will be will have a higher chances of positivity in first week, and if it's already second week of infection, then there are higher chances of getting positive results with the serological procedure, that is the Vidal test. There are certain other diagnostic tests like typhoid test, typhoid.m test, typhoid.rapid test. Right? We don't be getting into details of all these tests. Now, apart from the cases, it's also that in case of typhoid, diagnosis of carriers is also quite important. Because as we have discussed earlier, also it's the carriers who can keep on shedding the bacilli over a period of years, right? So we need to focus on the diagnosis of carriers, that is of importance for public health, and typhoid bacilli can be isolated from the feces or from the bile acidates of the carriers, as we have discussed earlier, that when the bacilli is harboring in the person for a longer period of time, it is there in the gallbladder or in the biliary tract. Okay. So regarding the lab diagnosis, okay, just remember that in the first week, blood culture is of importance. In the second week, serological testing by Vidal holds importance, and thereafter we can have many other newer diagnostic tests also. Then coming on to the control of typhoid fever. So we'll be quickly taking the control of typhoid fever. Now, in case you have any doubt, you can please tell me, or else we can take the last part, that is the control of typhoid fever. Archana Mandal.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it okay till now? Till lab diagnosis?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you clear till now? So we can take up with the last topic, that is the control of the typhoid fever. Yeah. So when we talk about the control of typhoid fever, we have to take care that we have to control all those things through which it was spreading. So first was the control of reservoirs, right? That was the cases as well as the carriers. Second one is important is to control of sanitation, and third important is immunization. So these are the 3 basic things that we need to control if we want to control typhoid. Okay. So you can see here only when we talk about the control of reservoirs, ठीक है, तो सबसे पहले हमें उनका spread रोकना है, ठीक है। तो स्प्रेड कहाँ कैसे रोकेंगे, जहाँ पे जो बेसिलाई है, ऑर्गेनिज्म है, वो अपने आप को हार्बर कर रहा है, दैट इज द रेजर्वॉयर में। ठीक है। सो द ऑर्गेनिज्म इज हार्बरिंग इटसेल्फ इन द reservoir in the cases and in the carriers. So we have to focus on the control of cases as well as on the carriers. Second important thing was control of sanitation. As we have discussed कि mode of transmission में sanitation it has a very important role. ठीक है। So second important thing is control of sanitation, and third important is immunization. When we see that the antibody production in case of typhoid, it can confer further immunity, and so not necessarily we have to get this immunity by disease itself. So immunization can be the other mode with which we can have the antibody. So these are the three things which we have to focus upon while controlling the typhoid fever. So first is when we talk about the control of the cases. In case of the cases, that is those who have the disease, what are the steps with which we can control? First is the early diagnosis. If the person is showing fever symptoms which are suggestive of typhoid, or like fever, diarrhea, abdominal upset, constitutional symptoms, certain spots, rash or the raw spots. So if we are suspecting that a person can have typhoid, so early diagnosis can definitely help in further controlling of the condition. So early diagnosis, that is initially in the first week, as we have already discussed, the early diagnosis will be preferably by the blood culture and the stool culture. Okay. So first is the early diagnosis of the cases. Second important is the notification. Okay, when we know that a person is having a disease, so the case should be notified so that the necessary and the early preventive methods can be taken. So the person has to be notified. This disease has to be notified, but notification can be done wherever it is mandatory. If it is not mandatory, then it is okay. Then third one is the foremost and the most important in case of the typhoid. That is the isolation, right? So we have read that the spread of the disease is through the bacilli is harboring. Bacilli is shedded through the stools and the urine of the infected person. So isolation should be done so that the other persons who are handling that particular person, or the guardians of that particular person, they are not getting this infection. So isolation should be done as early as possible. And in case of typhoid, we say that till we get 3 negative bacteriological reports, and that too done on 3 separate days. Okay, till that we need to isolate that person. Then for treatment, early treatment by appropriate antibiotics, that is for this typhoid, the antibiotic of choice is fluoroquinolones. So treatment should be done as early as possible and by appropriate antibiotics. Next importance is disinfection. Now we are knowing that the person who are infected, okay, now then their stool and the urine samples, they are getting into the hospitals. Okay, whenever it is always advised that the stool and the urine samples, they should be brought in the closed containers, and that should be properly covered, and that should be disinfected by keeping it in 5% Cresol for 2 hours, and all the linen, all the beddings that have been used by those infected persons, they should be washed with the 2% chlorine. So the proper disinfection should be done to remove all the remove the presence of the bacteria. Right? And thereafter follow-up examination of stool and the urine to see for the presence of the bacilli. That should be done at regular intervals, that is at 3 to 4 monthly interval. Clear? So that is about the control of the cases. So first of all, the most important one is the early diagnosis as early as possible, even in the first week itself. Okay, by knowing about the clinical features, we can make early diagnosis. Fever is there, step ladder fever, diarrhea, constipation, okay, along with abdominal upset, along with raw spots. So they can be the signs and symptoms which can help in early diagnosis, and then the blood culture or the serological serological testing can be done. If diagnosis has been made, then it is important to isolate that person till 3 bacteriological negative tests done on 3 separate days is achieved. Right? Isolation should be done. Meanwhile, treatment should be done. All the stool and urine samples, they should be disinfected. All the clothes should be disinfected. And follow-up examination to see that the bacilli is not there in the stool and urine further, that should be kept. Clear? Similarly, along with the cases, we have to focus on the control of the carriers also. They can be by identification by culture and serological examination, treatment by appropriate antibiotics should be given, right? Surgery like cholecystectomy, we have already discussed about the role of the gallbladder, okay? And kept under the carriers, they should be kept under surveillance for a routine period of time, and they should be given education, they should be given awareness, they should be informed that how they can be responsible for spreading the disease in a large section of the society. So that is the first important point, that is the control of cases as well as the carriers. So it is, you have to remember all these 6 important points. Second is the control of the sanitation. Okay, for control of the sanitation, we know that we should focus on the water sanitation. The water should not be contaminated. We should focus on the food sanitation, that is, food should be properly stored, food should be properly cooked. Okay, then we should focus on basic sanitation, that is, open defecation should be discouraged, sanitary napkins should be encouraged. Okay, then the handling should be all, the handling of the food, handling of the this urine and feces of the infected persons, that should always be properly hygienic. Okay, food hygienic facilities should be there, and people should be made aware to how to make proper, how to have a proper food hygiene, like proper covering of the food, proper storage of the food, proper cleaning of the utensils, proper washing of the hands. So all these things should be taken care of while we deal with the control of sanitation. And last important is the immunization. Okay, so immunization is for typhoid. Immunization is recommended to those who are living in the endemic area, who are more at a chance of this chance of infection, to the household contacts who are taking care of the infected person, who are in contact with that person, because there can be the risk of direct transmission, there can be the risk of indirect transmission. Okay. Then at-risk groups like school children, hospital staff. Okay. Then people who are going in some crowded areas like in melas and yatras. Okay. Or the travelers who are going to travel in that particular endemic area. So all these persons, for them vaccination is recommended. And for typhoid, we have 3 types of vaccines. First is the injectable typhoid vaccine. Second is the oral vaccine, right? So the injectable typhoid vaccine we can discuss. This is the injectable typhoid vaccine. This is a single dose vaccine. It can be given either subcutaneous or intramuscularly, and it is recommended usually after 2 years of age. And second is the oral vaccine. This vaccine is recommended after 6 years of age, and this is taken orally. 1 capsule is taken orally, and it is recommended that no antibiotic should be taken while the person is given the vaccine. So we have basically 2 types of vaccines. That is, the first is injectable vaccine given subcutaneously or intramuscularly, that is recommended after 2 years of age. And second is the oral vaccine, okay, that is taken orally, typhoral vaccine. This is a live attenuated vaccine, and this is recommended after 6 years of age. So that is the basic about the control of the typhoid fever. So in nutshell, when we talk about the control, we have to focus upon 3 things. First, on controlling those who have the disease or who are the carriers of the disease, in improving the sanitation of the area, and also we can focus on achieving antibody or achieving immunity through immunization. Okay. So while we talk about the cases and the controls, focusing on early diagnosis, then isolation, proper treatment, then disinfection and follow-up are important points for the management of the cases and the controls. Okay. Then secondly, for immunization, we have 2 types of vaccines. One can be the injectable vaccine, one can be the oral vaccine. Okay. We should know at what age both these vaccines can be given, what are the routes of the vaccine, right? And the third important is the control of sanitation, and for that, proper hygienic facilities, hand washing should be promoted. Okay. And For general sanitation, we should focus upon all the sanitary levels, that is starting from the water, from the food, from the personal hygiene, and latrines, toilets, and each and every general sanitation measure. Clear? So that is all about the general idea about the epidemiology, prevention, and control of typhoid. So any queries from your side? Is it okay? Have you understood the basic idea about the epidemiology and prevention?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Chetna, roll number 48. Chetna?
Yes.
Yeah. Chetna, can you tell me in crux that how we can focus on the control of the enteric fever? Just important highlights.
Ma'am, by improving the sanitization,
Okay.
open dump spaces, covering the open dump spaces,
Okay.
controlling the breeding sites.
Okay. The role of the breeding sites won't be there much in case of the typhoid.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else?
Ma'am, water supply should be clean.
Yes. That is the basic head. That is the control of sanitation. General sanitation we have to control. Clear? And second important thing.
Ma'am, food should not be kept open. Like, matlab, housefly infection should be
That is,
prevented.
everything is covered in the when we talk about general sanitation. Right? Then how we can control the cases and the carriers?
Ma'am, vaccinations.
Yes, that's another important thing. Immunization that can also help in achieving the immunity. And if a person is already having the disease, how we can manage that?
Ma'am, medications and
Okay. Anything else? We just discussed that if a person is already having a disease, he's a case, he's a carrier, okay, then we first of all we should focus on early diagnosis, then isolation and treatment of that particular person. Thereafter, disinfection of the stools and the linen should be done, right? And the proper follow-up should be done in that case. Clear?
yeah, yes.
Okay. So I guess that was all about this typhoid fever that we have taken. So any doubts, or we can then conclude this session? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Are the things clear to you? In case you have any doubts, you can contact me in the department at any time. Okay. Hope the things are clear. That's just a general preview given to you for about the enteric fever. Clear? Any doubts regarding this session? Or should we conclude the session?
In fever, the tachycardia occurs. And why it is so?
Sorry?
I'm told that in enteric fever there will be bradycardia, but generally in fever there occurs tachycardia.
Yeah. Yeah, actually what is there is this bradycardia, it is basically not related to fever itself. Right? We have earlier discussed also that in first week the fever will be there. Bradycardia is a subsequently on second or the third week, and that is because of the aggressive systemic involvement. That is not basically related to fever itself. Right? Don't relate bradycardia with fever. The bradycardia is not because of the fever, or it is not related to fever itself. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else you want to ask?